The majority of the work is not in learning what you need to do, but actually in enacting those habits. And that's what dietitians are world-class at and trained and certified in doing, is help both actually educating you on what the recommendation is and what you should do, but then ultimately staying with you along the way to help make those habits ingrained in reality, because ultimately what drives health outcomes is long-term sustainable change, not short-term things.
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Veneri. Today I'm joined by Aidan Dewar, co-founder and CEO of Nourish. In this episode, we discuss the company's food as medicine platform. Aiden explains how Nourish delivers personalized nutrition plans covered by insurance. Plus, we talk about integrating food delivery, navigating GLP-1s, and building a prevention-focused healthcare system. Let's get into it. Today's episode is brought to you by EGYM. EGYM provides fitness and health facilities with smart workout solutions built on its ecosystem of hardware, software, and partners. But it's more than cool tech. Their connected training experience delivers business results while helping members reach their wellness goals. If you run a gym, health club, YMCA, or any kind of fitness facility, you should check them out. Visit egym.com to learn more. Hi, Aiden. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Joe.
Let's get right into it. And can you introduce yourself and tell us about Nourish?
My name's Aidan Dewar. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Nourish. Nourish is a food as medicine platform that connects a whole host of different chronic condition patients with a registered dietitian over telehealth, and we get it covered by your health insurance. So we work with a bunch of national commercial health insurance payers, as well as Medicare, and soon to be many more, including Medicaid. And we make it really easy for you to get connected with a dietitian and work on whatever it is you want to work on. We've built a whole host of software tools around the experience as well. So messaging with your dietitian and tracking your meal logging and your health progress and all sorts of resources that are tailored to your condition. And then we have the largest network of registered dietitians in the country, over 1,000 at this point, and we match you to the perfect one for whatever you're working on.
Yeah, it's always, seems like it's harder than it needs to be to find a dietitian, to find any really trustworthy nutrition advice and guidance. And then, of course, paying for it is a totally separate issue. When you look at this, both the problem that you're trying to solve and the opportunity, I guess, how did you come to it? And just how do you think about the space and what has worked or hasn't worked to this point?
My co-founders and I got interested because we had run into the problems ourselves. So Sam and Stephanie, our two co-founders, and I had known each other for a while. Sam is my best friend from growing up, and Stephanie's a college friend of Sam's. And so when we had been hacking on projects for a while, and we were thinking about what we would work on for a longer period of time, we kept coming back to the experience we had with the healthcare system ourselves. And so I had pretty severe chronic migraines that after a couple of years of going through the healthcare system had ultimately solved by working with a dietitian. And then Sam and Stephanie had their own journey. And so basically through, speaking to my personal experience, through going that frustrating experience with the healthcare system and ultimately resolving it by changing what I ate, became aware of the broader problem in the healthcare system, which is that, America is spending about 20% of GDP on healthcare, over $4 trillion, which is more than any other country in the world and more than we ever have. And we're getting less for it. So, if you double click into that healthcare crisis, there's a lot of things wrong with the healthcare system, but in many ways, it's a chronic condition crisis. So if you look heart disease and diabetes and obesity and high blood pressure and cholesterol and eating disorders and GI conditions, all these things are at an all-time high. We're a generation that's sicker than our grandparents, despite all of the crazy technological advances that have happened in other parts of the economy. And so we kept coming back to that as one of the most important problems that we can work on, in the world. And when you double click one more time into that chronic condition crisis, what you realize is that it's a nutrition crisis. So after having that experience with dietitians ourselves, we saw all these chronic conditions are really downstream of what you eat. And so we thought it'd be a really exciting opportunity to help a lot of people by trying to build, a new health system that's more built around preventative healthcare and outcomes rather than, unfortunately, too often treating things when it's too late. And so through our own experience with dietitians, we realized that, we're not the first ones to realize how amazing dietitians and nutrition are at treating these conditions. For that reason, they're covered quite generously by commercial health insurance that many people get through their employers, but also through Medicare and Medicaid. And so what we do is really make it easy to take advantage of that benefit. Most people don't know about that benefit, and even if you do, it's hard to access to the fun problems with the healthcare and insurance system that you mentioned. So that's what we do. We make it really easy for patients to find a dietitian that's covered by insurance. We make it really easy for dietitians. We have an amazing team of over 1,000 dietitians at this point to do a type of care that they love, work remotely over telehealth and treat patients that they're amazing at treating, and then improve the health outcomes of all these chronic conditions that, as I mentioned, end up making up the majority of the cost in the system. So
Yeah, it's massively important. And as you're describing it, I think people who have had any type of experience or trying to use food or preventative health as a means of solving all these different chronic conditions and healthcare more broadly, it's obvious. But when you get down to it, working inside the system, really, it's much more difficult rather than meets the eye. When you talk about building kind of this marketplace, connecting people, how does that function? What does the platform look like, let's say, from the patient or user perspective when they learn about Nourish?
you go onto our website and you can check it out, usenourish.com, and you go through our sign up flow. What we do is we ask you a series of questions about what your health history is and what problems you're currently facing. And through that, we have a really awesome algorithm that our team has built that matches you to the perfect dietitian on things including what condition you're working on, but also more subtle things like what language you speak, what culture you come from, so that a dietitian can tailor their food recommendations to your culture, as well as just things like the dietitian approach. Are you someone who loves a bit more like tough love, or maybe a bit of a softer approach? And through that process, we match you to, as I said, we have tons of data, having over 1,000 dietitians at this point, to the dietitian that will deliver the best health outcomes to you. And then once you're actually working with the dietitian, the dietitians are amazing. What they do is they really personalize the care to you. So your intake appointment is more about understanding what's going on with you and creating a personalized care plan to treat you. And then the follow-up appointments are more about refining and actually actioning on that care plan. And then throughout the process, all patients have access completely covered by their health insurance to both the dietitian appointment, but to also to our software platform that I alluded to, that where you can message back and forth to your dietitian. You can track your meal logs, and your dietitian will see that and coach you up on it. Track all your health progress, and we built some cool integrations there, as well as resources and content that's tailored to your condition. So
It's kind of the same way with exercise. When you think about nutrition, it's a lot of people, they might know and think that they need to do certain things and have an idea of it, and then maybe they hire a personal trainer, in this case have access to a dietitian, and they're getting this information, but then executing it is pretty difficult. So when you think about those tools in that platform, is it the software? Is it the meal tracking? Is it the one-on-one interaction with the coach? The combination of all those things that make it possible to, like, hey, we're actually adhering to this, and we're seeing some type of health outcome on the other side of it.
to your point, it's all of those, but I think often it's the accountability and the coach itself, the registered dietitian, who's helping you actually enact those recommendations. So anyone can go on Google and use Dr. Google, but the information might not be correct. But even if it is, the majority of the work is not in learning what you need to do, but actually in enacting those habits. And that's what dietitians are world class at and trained and certified in doing, is help both actually educating you on what the recommendation is and what you should do, but then ultimately staying with you along the way to help make those habits ingrained in reality. Because ultimately, what drives health outcomes is long-term sustainable change, not short-term things. And I think anyone, including me, who's struggled with a chronic condition or their weight, knows that those quick fixes that may work for a few weeks, if they don't last, it doesn't matter. And so that's really what the dietitians look on, is that long-term sustainable behavior change.
When it comes to the individuals, the users, you mentioned folks have access to this coverage and oftentimes they don't know about it. How are you reaching them? What is that? Is that marketing? Is it through the health insurance? How are you educating them on what they're able to use, and then basically onboarding them?
We do, as you mentioned, work with our awesome insurance payer partners to get in front of patients who can benefit for our service. We also do a lot of digital advertising. So all the places you see on your phone, like Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and Google and whatnot, we try to be in those places, and we partner with a lot of cool influencers, including Alex Morgan, who's the U.S. women's soccer player who joined our last investment round and has been a great partner to get the word out. But also just influencers that are very specific to chronic conditions, whether it's diabetes or GI conditions or eating disorders or something like that. So between our insurance payer partners and that, we get a lot of patients. And then the last thing that I'd mention is we have an awesome kind of provider referral team that goes out and works with medical practices. So that could be an individual piece, everything from the individual primary care doctor that you might have to large health systems in practices. We work with them to kind of integrate into their care plan, so that your primary care doctor can actually, when they diagnose you with one of these chronic conditions, have a recommendation to be getting ready to work with a dietitian that's covered by your insurance.
Do you have a sense of or even a benchmark of which one of those buckets you prioritize or you prefer folks to come through? Like, is it spread out evenly? Do you see more through kind of like direct to consumer? Do you see more through this referral? And is there like an ideal split as you think about continuing to grow the user base?
They're all, relatively even in terms of where we find patients. I'd say the ideal one would be people finding out via word of mouth, which, still has always been a giant channel for us. I think it's, when people have a great experience with their dietitian, they want to tell someone else about it. And so we still, get a ton of awesome patients that way. So that's definitely the ideal one. We always love when people hear about it from someone else. But in terms of the others, it's really just about meeting people where they are. So it's really about what's best for the patient rather than Nourish itself.
You have a couple different stakeholders, right? When you think of the user, the dietitian, then kind of talking about the health plans, insurers. From the dietitian standpoint, what is that process like in terms of recruiting, vetting, ensuring that they're delivering the type of service that you kind of expect?
We have been fortunate. You mentioned how we find patients. We've been fortunate that for the whole history of the business, we really found dietitians via word of mouth, which I think is a testament to all the hard work our team's done to make it the best place for dietitians to work in the country. One thing we do is we actually employ all the dietitians directly, so they're W-2 employees, not contractors, and so through that we're able to give them things like benefits, and for dietitians that spend time with Nourish for an extended period of time, we actually give them equity in the company as well, and so. We know that we're only as good as the registered dietitians who are the ones delivering the health outcomes, and so we really try to invest in, as I mentioned, being the best place for dietitians to work and having a whole host of benefits for them. And so we've been fortunate enough to really have great word of mouth among dietitians, and really we're just our job then is just to evaluate who are the best fit for Nourish and our patients, and then get them in the door and provide them all the software tools, as well as the coaching that they need to succeed, because we're really proud of the software we've built for them as well to kind of manage the care they deliver. All of the features I mentioned that patients have, like meal logging and messaging and the content and tracking progress. The dietitians have their own version. That's really where I think the magic comes in. You can use software. You can find software and nutrition apps out there that are great, like MyFitnessPal or something like that. But when it's just you kind of single player using it yourself, I think it's not as effective as when you have a registered dietitian who's on the other side. And that's really kind of ultimately where we want to head with the business longer term, is continuing to really invest in those features, both for patients and dietitians, as well as integrating the food itself into the product, which is the food part of food as medicine, which I think could be an exciting thing for us to talk about as well.
One more down the stakeholder path, when you talk about this benefit being provided, a lot of people not knowing about it, obviously the health plans and insurers wanting to make sure that the money that they're spending is actually having some type of health outcome. How are you quantifying in terms of like, this is working for patients, these are the results that we're seeing, like this is why an insurer is going to continue to pay for it?
To your point, this is super important. It's both the mission of the business is to deliver these health outcomes, but of course also for our payer partners, we want to make sure that they are getting what they getting their money's worth out of it. And so, I mean, since the start of the business, we always talk about with our dietitians and the whole broad team that the way we measure success in achieving our mission is how many people do we help and how much do we help them. And I think what you're getting at is the latter, which is how much do we help them and how do you quantify how much we help people and the quality of the care. And so what we've done is a few things. We have patient reported health outcomes. So when you're using the app, you can kind of track your progress yourself. The dietitian will also track outcomes based on their conversations with the patients. And then we have built and are continuing to build all sorts of integrations with medical records, as well as third party tools like your Apple Watch and your Whoop and your Oura Ring and all those things to be able to track how things are going. And then what we do is we surface all that data to our payer partners deliberately to show them kind of the ROI that our care is having on patients. And it's really a collaborative process because the payers obviously they already cover it, and so they know that the health outcomes are there. So it's more about working with them together to put more sophisticated numbers behind the exact impact we're having.
The Fitt Insider Podcast is brought to you by our friends at EGYM. This is an exciting partnership for us, and not just because EGYM makes some of the most innovative fitness products out there, but because the entire EGYM team, led by their CEO, Philip, is committed to making health, fitness, and well-being more accessible for everyone. And that's a mission we can get behind. By combining their smart equipment with integrated software and hundreds of connected partner brands, EGYM helps fitness facilities stand out by delivering a personalized, gamified workout experience that improves outcomes and member engagement. So if you're a gym or health club operator thinking about how to best serve your members while driving business results, go see what EGYM is up to at egym.com. As you think about continuing to evolve, like at this place, obviously a marketplace, connect people, getting this paid for, showing the health outcomes that impact. You kind of alluded to it there in terms of, potentially introducing food into this. When you think about the opportunity beyond a marketplace, like what does that look like to you to really tackle this food as medicine, chronic condition crisis that we're facing?
So that is a really exciting thing for us on the horizon. As I mentioned, is adding the food part of food as medicine to it, and working directly again with our payer partners to do this because they're very excited about this. And the way I think about it is, we mentioned earlier that a lot of what the dietitian is doing is about educating you on what you need to work on, providing recommendations, and then working to integrate those recommendations into your life so that they become your long-term habits. I think where I think about food is really it's kind of the final step is like actually bridging the gap between recommendation and action is having not just the dietitian's recommendation show up in the app or speak to you on the telehealth call, but actually having then the recommendation implemented by the food showing up on your doorstep. And the way we talk about it is how do we help dietitians prescribe food in the same way that the doctors prescribe medicine. And what that looks like in practice is the dietitian being able to work with you on a meal plan and recipes and an ingredient list that is tailored specifically to you. So medically tailored meals, whether that's a diet for a diabetic or someone with disordered eating or GI condition, as I mentioned, and then actually having that recommendation show up via whether that's groceries, fresh food, and we're working on integrations with some major partners there, or prepared meals. So things like meal kits that maybe people are familiar with, and then the goal, because a lot of the patients we work with and where a lot of chronic conditions are disproportionately having their impact is with low income populations. And so as we work with Medicaid plans and expand into that, we're really working on not just the recommendation and the food showing up, but actually working on the food access piece. And so you might not be in a place where there's healthy food easy to access around you. And so the delivery of the food is an important part of bridging that access. But of course, the cost is also an important part. And so integrating with things like SNAP, which is formerly known as food stamps, and WIC, which is the Women and Children program, is a way for us to get that food, subsidized so that people can get access to it. And the health plans we're working with and payer partners, especially within Medicaid, but also in commercial plans, are really excited about subsidizing food there as well because we spoke to ROI earlier, but being able to treat patients with food, that's the medicine part of food, before they need typical medicine like insulin or whatever it might be, is really cost effective. In addition to obviously a really motivating mission to work on.
When you think about integrating food into this, is all of that through partnerships as opposed to having like the actual Nourish delivering food, preparing food, meal kits? Is this all kind of through partnerships and those integrations, or do you think it's going to be kind of getting into like actually managing food preparation and delivery?
I'd never say never, but I think the plan is to do partnerships. There's a lot of people out there who've done built awesome products around food, and so I think we want to be able to leverage those rather than trying to do that ourselves. And the thing is, we kind of already know the brands that our dietitians love recommending today and the types of meals they love recommending today, and so a lot of it will be about us proactively just going to those people and saying, "Hey, we're already recommending you, so let's turn it into a partnership."
And as that platform continues to evolve, will it always be, or I guess we can't, like you said, never say never, but do you foresee it having multiple paths? Like, let's say I don't necessarily want or need the ongoing dietitian relationship, but maybe I need that as I get onboarded, I get the food delivered. How do you see that kind of patient user journey evolving?
I think that's exactly right. I mean, we want to build kind of a whole host of software and products around the dietitian experience, with the dietitian at the center of it, such that you can get value before you ever see a dietitian, while you're seeing a dietitian, and then after you see a dietitian. The way that works, in practice often today is, you start by working with the dietitian, you get your recommendations, you start implementing it, and then once those habits, once you hopefully make awesome progress, you kind of go into more maintenance mode. And so you might start seeing a dietitian weekly, but then end seeing them, every few months, and then in between, when it becomes a less frequent session, you're really relying on the software tools and ultimately the food that we spoke about to help maintain and continue your progress.
Another topic that's obviously top of mind is kind of the rise of GLP-1s, how that's impacting not only nutrition but lifestyle interventions in general. Nothing new per se, but the interest in them, the buzz around them, and the implications for dietitians and food as medicine. How are you thinking about the challenges and opportunities in that space?
We definitely have seen, a groundswell of interest in risk in the same way that everyone has, whether that's from patients or a meaningful chunk of our patients are on these drugs or looking to be out these drugs or asking about these drugs, or whether that's our payer partners that are asking us about how we can fit into their strategy there and managing costs, or our referring providers who are, of course, in the case of primary care doctors, sometimes prescribing this, or other specialists just working with patients who are on these drugs. And so the way we really see our place in the equation is, as a complement and helping people who are taking these drugs or thinking about taking these drugs to go through their course of care, in the same way that, if you are on maybe an anti-anxiety medicine or an antidepressant, you might work with a psychiatrist or a therapist. We kind of see our role in that as the equivalent of being kind of the provider who helps guide you through your journey. And, these drugs, while of course I've seen a spike in interest due to getting FDA approved for weight loss, have been around for much longer than just a few years. They've been around for, a decade plus for diabetes, and our dietitians have been, working with patients who are on these drugs for diabetes for a long time. And so, they have the relevant expertise to do things like manage side effects or dosage, or make sure patients adhere to it, or just provide like the relevant coaching that helps you make sure that the outcomes you have last. Because, unfortunately, when you get off these drugs, typically if you don't change your long-term habits, often you'll see rebound weight gain, or kind of a reversal of the progress you've made. And so we're really trying to kind of work within, the existing system, whether that's working with our payers or provider partners, to be a complement, as I mentioned. And we know a lot of patients are interested in this. So we built out a lot of cool tooling and resources to support patients on that.
Changing gears a little bit, when was the company founded? How long have you been around?
We've been around for about 2.5 years now.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And so moving fast, I think to this point, raised the most recent round was what, $35 million in funding, and had previously closed a funding round before that. Super ambitious plans in terms of building the software and adding the impact of the number of people that you reach, and now getting into the food integrations. I guess what I'm saying is it's impressive progress to date. How have you kind of thought about, building what has to be a high performing team to execute at this kind of speed and deliver the kind of health outcomes that you've kind of set the bar at?
I really think the way I talk about, the importance of the team is that, everyone talks about, people are the most important thing and culture is the most important thing, and to the point where it becomes cliches. But I actually think those things are true, and they're probably more true than most people appreciate because they are cliches. And so we don't have some, silver bullet that other people haven't figured out in terms of a special way to evaluate the best people or something like that. Or we just really do it with a lot of work. We try to kind of put our time and effort and dollars where our mouth is in terms of attracting and retaining all the best talent that exists. And we'd much rather, and that includes, our awesome dietitian team. So what that looks like in practice is just a lot of hard work of making sure we really deliberately keep the bar high and the talent bar high. Because, to your point, as you mentioned, the funding and the ambition here, we're really trying to do something difficult and ambitious, which is try to help solve this American healthcare crisis that has been going on for, a long period of time. And to do that, I think we need to have a special group of people that is really excited about our mission and also ambitious about how do we build, a new health system that's built around preventative care and is, incentivized on outcomes rather than unfortunately treating things when it's a bit later in the process.
Yeah, when you think about, obviously, when you're in, your position and you're disrupting this broken healthcare system that is not built around prevention and does not prioritize food and nutrition in the way that, you obviously think, and I do as well. What is that like in terms of the interactions with insurers or health plans, or kind of the folks that you need to work with to make it work, but they're making it the kind of problem in the first place? Like, how do you approach that relationship?
The way I think about our payer partners, and we've been fortunate to have really awesome ones today and more to come, is that I think there might be a stereotype that payers are difficult to work with, which of course, there are challenges to working with a large system like American healthcare. But I don't think it's specifically their fault or something. I think that all the people we meet at the payers we work with really care about the same things you and I care about, which is, improving people's health and expanding access to care. And so while of course, with a large system of $4 trillion in American healthcare, there's a lot of, barriers and challenges to navigate. We found with working with our payer partners that they care about the same things we care about, and while of course there's work to be done mutually, that really things are we're aligned with in terms of the goal. And so we have an awesome payer team internally that works with them, and we're really expanding access to even more payers that care about food as medicine. We find that when we have these conversations, it's very collaborative. They really looking to partner with people in food as medicine because they believe the same things we're talking about here, and it's more that they are looking for someone to help them do it because these companies have been around for 100 years. Some of them are some of the biggest companies in the U.S. And so being able to partner with startups that can kind of help them innovate is something they're really excited about.
When you think about tackling this systemic problem, is it a matter of startups that are coming to the space that are kind of enabling these other paths to prevention? How do we get to a place where, or can we get to a place where food is medicine or lifestyle recommendations and interventions and physical activity, these kind of common sense and in some cases broadly accessible things are the first line of defense?
It's $1 trillion question. I definitely don't have all the answers, but the way I think about it is we really try to ultimately to build a new system. We think we have to work within the system, and that's why since the start we've been trying to accept health insurance and kind of play the game that's on the field. But ultimately to get at what you were talking about, the deeper problem here, and ultimately which is the long-term mission of Nourish is to actually build a new healthcare system that works for all the relevant parties. And I think there's a lot of things to solve here, but I think the two most important ones we think about are one, kind of building a system more around preventative care and treating problems before they happen or when they're just starting, as opposed to when it's too late. And then the second piece is really just incentives. I think a lot of the system is built just in terms of the incentives and how it works around getting paid for more care, more drugs, more surgeries, more services. And I think when that is the incentive and everyone in the system, gets paid for when that happens, it's not surprising that when you look at what's happened is more care happens, more surgeries, more costs, et cetera. And so I think moving towards a world where people are paid for outcomes and health outcomes that are delivered as opposed to just services that happen. Ultimately, if we don't change the incentives, I don't think we'll be able to change the system itself. And so value-based care, I think, is kind of the buzzword in the healthcare world, and that is getting a lot of prevalence. I think it's ultimately where the puck is going, which is just can mean a lot of different things, but ultimately it just means paying for success and results as opposed to just time or care that's delivered.
Yeah, do you have, and I'm sure you do, but to the extent that it's formed at this point, a vision for what this new or the Nourish healthcare system looks like when you talk about either reinventing it or working within it to then create this new thing? What would that, I guess, ideal world look like?
I think it starts with nutrition. So that's why we started here very deliberately. We think, I mentioned there's this chronic condition crisis and really that's driving a lot of the healthcare costs. And when you look at it, the vast majority of the cost in that system is downstream stuff that's nutrition. So we started with food and nutrition very deliberately. And that's why, the food part of food as medicine is up next. Where I think about where it heads longer term, which, really is longer term. I think we have, many years to build just within the food as medicine space. I think it looks like trying to replicate that playbook with other specialties that are preventative. So that could look like primary care or mental health care and many other specialties that we work with today, trying to integrate that more directly into our products such that we kind of can be a one-stop shop for all of that preventative care. And today we're working with those people as partners. So we refer out to a lot of these great specialists. And as I mentioned earlier, when you ask, how we get in front of people, we get referred in by a lot of these specialists. And so I think ultimately in the longer term down the road, it would look like trying to do more and more of that in-house to try to build, a multi-specialty preventative healthcare practice. And then, I alluded to kind of the incentives and moving to preventative care. And I think ultimately, once you have that multi-specialty practice, what it looks like to build that new health systems, you actually have to take on more and more risk yourself. That's what value-based care ultimately is taking on the risk of the outcomes going well, as opposed to just getting paid for your time. And so I think that's where we want to head in the long term ourselves, is to be, taking on more and more of that risk to ultimately be essentially, a combo payer and provider ourselves. And I think owning that full stack is kind of what it takes to reinvent the whole health system. But that'll take us a while, and we've got plenty of time to build in food as medicine. But I think that's ultimately the ambition that we talk about as a team, is reinventing the whole stack.
Yeah, a huge opportunity and much needed, as we've talked about all the issues, but a long kind of timeline and runway to get there. A lot of work still to be done. When you think about earlier this year, closing around of funding, and now we're almost at the halfway point in the year. It's coming up quick. When you think about the back half of the year, there milestones, goals, like what are you prioritizing with the team? What are you excited about as you continue to execute? Anything that's top of mind?
First up, which is what we spent a lot of the first half of this year doing, was just, scaling up what was already working at the same time as improving the product itself to deliver those outcomes. I mentioned the way we think about success is scale and outcomes, how many people we can help and how much we can help them. And so we've been focused on those two things to the start of the year. We've been able to grow the network of dietitians significantly. As I mentioned, we're now over 1,000 and the largest network in the country. We've been able to get in front of a lot more patients, and we've been able to add more payers as well, more health insurance coverage so that we can support more and more types of patients. And on the outcome side, we've shipped a lot of the product that we talked about today in the mobile app, in our web app, both that faces patients and providers and payers as well, who we think are the three stakeholders. We made a lot of awesome progress there. So I think the back half of the year is more of the same there, with specifically, I think, the milestone of launching the food product that we talked about already, I think is what we're trying to do. And we're working closely with various partners as well as our payers to do that. So I think if we can get all that done this year, we'll be in a really good spot at the end of 2024, heading into 2025.
Yeah, we'll certainly be keeping tabs on all that as it rolls out, and keep us posted on those developments. And we'll get you out here on this, whether it's folks that want to learn more, potential partners, where would you point people? What's the best place to keep up with Nourish?
We talked about it a little bit earlier, but I think people and bringing awesome people on the team is really the most important thing we can do to increase the chances of achieving our mission. So I would point awesome candidates who are passionate about what we're working on and the roles we might have to our careers page. So you can go to usenourish.com, find the careers page. It's usenourish.com/careers. And we're always looking to hire amazing people when we find them, not necessarily when we need them, because when we need them, it's too late. But we do have a bunch of specific roles listed on there. And so, I would really urge people who are passionate about what we're working on to get in touch because we'd love to talk about working together. And then I think last thing I'd point to, as we talked about today, we have an ambitious mission, and definitely to be able to achieve that, we really need to partner with a lot of the existing people in the system who are doing amazing work. And so whether that means you're a registered dietitian who's excited to join Nourish and work with us, or an insurance payer who is excited to work with a food as medicine platform like us, or whether that's a partner who wants to refer patients to us or whatnot, we're always looking to get in front of to meet with really awesome people in the system who are doing great work and have mutually shared goals to find ways that we can collaborate. So would urge them to get in touch as well.
Perfect. We will link up the website and the different places to reach out there, and appreciate you making some time today. It's an awesome mission, a much needed kind of evolution in the space. So appreciate you sharing it with us. One more thing before you head out, help us spread the word. Take a minute to rate and review the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, or share this episode with a friend. And if you like conversations like this, you'll love the Fitt Insider newsletter. We send it every Tuesday. The link is in the description. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you back here next week.